Sometimes when you have a camera set up for an interview, you want to keep the viewer engaged. And one way to do that is to create movement with the camera, some interesting subtle movement. So what you're seeing right now is just a static shot. But if I enable my camera here, you'll notice that the camera is now moving, but I remain centered in frame. So the background is kind of shifting, and it gives this little parallax effect, but yet I remain centered in frame. And we're doing this with a motorized slider. We're using the iFootage Shark slider with the S1A1 Motorized kit, and we're also using an X2 motion head, which controls the panning. Over here I have the remote, which I can control the start, the stop, the speed. I can adjust my angles. Basically, you just set a point A and point B of how the camera should be, and then it'll automatically do it. So anyways, I'm gonna show you guys what the iFootage Shark slider is, the motorized kit, and the X2 head. So we'll go back to the table, set it up from scratch, and show you guys how this works. All right, so if you're looking for that one slider that gives you that automatic side-to-side motion, also automatically pans the camera as it moves side to side, then you're gonna want a motorized slider or something like the iFootage Shark slider here with the S1A1 motorized kit, which moves the slider side to side, and then also the X2 motion head, which gives you that automatic panning and tilt if you really wanted to. But the reason why I'm bringing up this system is because it's very quiet. It's super silent, and it's typically when you're working on interviews that you want some of that automatic side-to-side B-roll. So you need something very, very quiet, something automated, very precise. So this kit works out great. And so what we're going to do now is we're just going to build it up. I'll show you all the pieces that you need to get this system working. Now, there are other sliders that can do automatic panning, like Red Rock Micro's One Man Crew. The thing about the One Man Crew, though, is it doesn't move the camera head, to different angles. Basically, it's a slider that has a built-in radius, so it's a built-in curve, and it follows that track. Now, when you have a set fixed radius, then you have a set distance that slider is going to operate at in order to keep your subject in frame. So you're always going to have to be pretty much at that distance. The slider that we're looking at here with the X2 motion head, we can set points, so we can be as close as we want, as far as we want. We can allow the camera to track their subject at any distance. So you're going to get a lot more flexibility with a system like this. There are a little bit more pieces, maybe more costly. I don't know. I didn't compare. But overall, you're going to be able to use this system in a lot more different ways than just your automatic panning. Again, this will work with like time lapse if you guys want to get custom with that. But I'm not going to get too in depth. This is a very advanced system. Today, we're just going to build it up for that side-to-side automatic kind of ping pong effect with some parallax tracking, so keeping your subject in frame. So let's go ahead and build that up. Okay, so there you go. We have the Shark slider set up, got the legs out. Again, you can use this manually. There is a belt drive here. You can add the flywheel. You can also add extensions, so you can make this slider longer. So you just take one of these sides apart, add the extra rails, and then you can just get longer. So if you wanted a longer track, you could do that. Let's go ahead and add the motorized system now. So in here we have the S1A1, which is basically a motor to drive this slider side to side. In it, you'll have a remote. You'll have a V-mount battery, which powers the system. Here's the motor right here that attaches to the end. You'll need a gear to drive the belt, and two knobs to attach it. Inside the case, there are a bunch of other accessories. Again, if you're doing time lapse, you'll find a lot of that stuff in here. You'll also find the charger for the V-mount and some other stuff. But today we're just getting set up for the side-to-side parallax. No tools required. We're just going to take out this little gear here. We're going to drop the other belt-driven gear over here. Got these two little red knobs you just put here, and this holds the bracket in place. Tension on the belt is done by pulling this motor back, and then there's some clamps underneath here. So we just pull this back a little bit, tighten it up underneath. Put this back on the gear. We're done. Now all we have to do is add our V-mount battery. Now the V-mount attaches to the back of the motor, but it doesn't actually give any electrical connection. We have to add one more cable that connects from the D-tap out of the battery to the motor. All right, so now that we have the cable attached from the battery to the motor here with this little D-tap cable, we got the antenna on here. Before you power this unit on, you have to make sure that you're set to 0 on your slider. So you're going to want to slide this all the way back, and that is going to be 0, and then we'll measure from this distance to the end here. Because if you're adding extensions, it has to know how long your rail is, so you always want to start at 0. So make sure before you turn on your unit, you set this all the way back, power this on, see a little green light blinking here, and then it will know where 0 is, and every time this motor moves, it actually counts the distance. So you want to make sure you're always at 0. The remote here is how we control it. Let's turn this on. Now we need to measure our slider. That's the first thing we want to do. So we're going to go into our settings here, and we're going to set our distance. So we're going to move our slider all the way down to the end. Now what I'll show you is I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap here. I can move it all the way to the end, but I'm going to leave a little bit of a gap on purpose, because what I want to do is I'm going to save this. And so now the distance is set. If we were to move this slider manually, I can go all the way back, and while holding the joystick, it'll automatically stop at 0. Remember, we started there. Now if I go the opposite direction, no matter how much I hold this joystick, it will stop at the end because we've measured our slider. So you'll see we'll always get the exact same gap. Now that we have our slider set here, we want to just record our movement or our distance, right? So let's go into our record mode, and we can do a couple of different recordings and save them. But I'm gonna record this one here, and we're gonna move the slider all the way down to the end. Actually, I'll move it right here, so I'm leaving a little bit longer of a gap. I'm gonna hit stop. So that's saved on number 4 here for me. Now if we go to auto, we want to say ABA mode, and we can actually set how fast we want it to repeat. So let's do a circle run, which is the repeating one, and I set the speed. So at this point, it's going to go all the way to the end where we recorded. You'll notice the gap here. It's a larger gap than our limit before, and it's actually going to repeat this process. So this is the circle run. Now I have a microphone up here. You can hear me. You could barely hear the motor running on this thing, so it's going to work out great for your talent if you're interviewing them and you have your microphone pointing to them, especially if you have a directional type of microphone that's away from this slider. And it's moving fairly quickly. If it was moving slower, it'd be like dead silent, and we do want to move it slower. Anyway, so now that we have this repeating motion here, now we want our camera to automatically pan. So we're going to add the X2 motion head. So let's get that set up right now. So everything in here is the X2 motion head. So it's 2-axis. You combine it with this and you have a full 3-axis motorized slider. Now to get this on here, you can drop it onto this platform. Now they come up with some really clever designs that integrate all of their tools together. So they actually have a quick release bracket that goes on here first, and then we were able to get the X2 head on and off very quickly. Now you'll notice I'm not using any tools. Everything that they kind of use is all like little thumb screws and knobs, so very quick to set up. So let's get the QR bracket on here. So here's a QR bracket. We're just going to add one up to the top here. That's it. One down at the bottom here. So here it is. This is the QR base that will drop in here, and you'll notice it'll line up perfectly. We loosen this, and then we clamp this on. So here's the base now to slide our head in. We have a QR plate that's added to the bottom of this head. You see the QR plate just mounts using 2 screws, just like a regular QR. So you just need a quarter to tighten that up. And then you would slide this on just like that, and we would tighten this down. So if we wanted to get this whole system off of our slider, very quick to do. It's all quick release. So let's get our camera now mounted on this system, and then we'll set up our panning as we slide side to side. Actually, before we get into that, let's power up this head. Now, this head comes with everything you need except for the remote. Now, the remote comes with your slider here. You could buy this separately. You can mount this onto a tripod, onto a jib, and you could buy it with the remote and just operate this 2-axis head on its own. So you don't have to use it with the slider, but if you have this slider, if you have this S1A1, all you need to do is buy the head without the remote. The remote, you upgrade the firmware and it already supports the full 3-axis. So this remote is already set up to work with this. Now we need to power this on. There's a couple of ways to do it. You could use a long cable. You can take an output from this battery, so you could plug it in here and then plug it over there. Or you can run it off of its own battery. If you look on the side here, there is a V-mount battery mount here. So we could just power this head off of that battery. What I have here is a couple of super small, super lightweight new Came TV batteries here. These are shorter, slimmer, lighter V-mounts that just came out. So super nice. Different capacities. Here we have 130 watt, 65 watt, 95 watt, 120 watt. We don't need a lot of power, so I'm just gonna use a 65 here. We got juice, so we're just gonna dock this here. Now, same thing like the slider. This is just holding the battery. We need to run a cable to power the X2. So we got another little D-tap here that they give you. So we'll plug this in and then plug it right into the side here. And we'll power this on. Now on the remote, it actually tells me that the it'll go to the default position. So we'll say okay, and it's going to move to the default position. There you go, done. All right, so on our remote here, we can manually, now that we have all 3 axes synced, we can move the slider. We can also tilt the camera. We can also pan the camera. All right, so we're gonna record our next movement here, and then we're gonna be able to play that back. So we'll have that parallax effect. So without even mounting the camera, you could see that I have this position at an angle. So if I was to pan the camera and set my tilt, I'm going to get my subject in frame. So I'm going to angle it this way if my subject is here. And then what we want to do is, this is going to be our starting point, right? So our 0 point. We're going to record our route now. So we're going to hit record. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the slider to where I want it to end. I'll go all the way to the end. I'll also pan my camera so that my subject is in frame on this opposite end here, and hit stop. So I could tilt, but I'm not going to tilt. We're just going to pan. So I started with a pan here facing inward, went to a move at this end with the camera basically tilting at this angle or panning at this angle, keeping my subject in frame. Now the remote is automatically going to tween the motion in between these 2 points. So let's go to auto. Let's do our ABA mode here. Let's do a circle run. So it's going to go back first. And again, we can actually set how fast our speed is. But you'll notice that as we're doing circle run, I'm not even going to hold this remote. You'll notice that it's actually panning the camera until it gets to this end. So it's going to tween your movement from point A to point B. And once again, we could set the speed in between on how fast it's doing that movement. But this is basically how you could set up your parallax slider movement using the iFootage with the S1A1 and the X2 motion head. Pretty straightforward. All you have to do is remember to set your 0 points when you first turn it on, and then you record your point A and your point B, and then you just play it back. I'm not going to get too in-depth again because it is a very advanced system. You could repeat all of this through a time lapse. You can have this automatically fire the shutter on your camera. They have all of these accessories built into these kits. But for more information about all this iFootage stuff, I'll have a link below this video or on the blog, cheesycam.com, or leave some comments, some questions if you guys have it. You can find all of this stuff over at camotionllc.com. Once again, I'll have a link to all this stuff. But if you guys have any questions, let me know, cheesycam.com.